Hi, I'm Jasper. Since I was a kid, my parents had been preparing me to take over the family business. We had everything, and such a life might seem perfect. But I dreamed of becoming an artist and applied to a school of art in secret. When I got a notification saying I had been accepted, I couldn't believe my eyes. I was happy, but my parents threw a fit. Mom burst into tears. Dad went ballistic. If you go to that school, we will no longer support you. That same day, I packed up and left home. The school was in another city. I booked the ticket and got to the dorms by the evening. Looking forward to a new life, I went up to the porch when I suddenly heard the roar of an engine. I turned around and saw a bike speeding up towards the dorms at high speed. It skidded and the biker fell off. Scared, I ran up to him to help. But then, the biker suddenly jumped to his feet, took off his helmet, and I realized it was a girl. For some reason, her face seemed familiar to me. Where could we have met? The girl suddenly bombarded me with accusations. Why were you standing in the middle of the road? I almost crashed because of you. Unbelievable. I had been standing by the door and hadn't even been in her way at all. But I didn't have time to say anything. She jumped back on the bike and drove away. Then a guy came up to me and told me not to mind her. That was Lucia. She's a real rebel. She's so mean, even boys try not to mess with her. I'm Kit, by the way. It turned out that Keith and I were roommates. After checking in, I turned on my laptop and registered on a website for freelancers. I needed money and hoped I would be offered a job soon. I quickly grew to love school, but I was running out of money and my job hunt wasn't going great. I worried about it a lot. But one day, my art history teacher came up to me. Mr. Allen had seen my profile on the website and asked me to paint him a picture for a good fee. I was shocked. I see that you are in a tough spot and want to support you. Besides, I like your style. I was very grateful to him. From that day on, I stayed late at school and started working on the painting. Instead of my usual paints, I used spray cans. I also borrowed a special varnish from Kit. One day, I was staying late in the workshop, as usual, when I suddenly heard loud voices. I looked out into the hallway and saw Mr. Allen and Lucia. The girl was shouting at my teacher. How dare she talk to him like that? After throwing a fit, Lucia left. As she was passing by me, I couldn't help but stop her. Are you crazy? Why did you talk to Mr. Allen like that? None of your business. Stay out of it. The school was closed for the night, and I kept working in the common living room of the dorm. I finished the painting, varnished it, and was going to use fire. It was my special technique, and usually everything worked out fine. But that time, something went wrong. The flames were too strong. What the hell? I managed to jump aside, but the fire had already spread to the curtains and carpet. The fire alarm went off, and the other students and our residence hall director came running to the living room. The fire was quickly dealt with, but I was accused of violating safety rules. The next day, they debated whether I should be expelled or not. But in the end, I was just kicked out of the dorm. I didn't understand what had happened. The fire shouldn't have been that strong. Unless someone had messed with my materials. Kit had given me the varnish. Had he set me up? I found him in the dorm and questioned him. Kit denied everything, and we ended up fighting. I lost my only friend in town. I had almost no money left, and I barely scraped together enough to rent a tiny room. Difficult times began for me. I was desperate and ready to take any job when I suddenly got an offer. The customer wanted me to restore several paintings. I had a little experience with such work, but I hadn't worked with such expensive paintings yet. It was scary to take on such responsibility, but the payment was good, and I agreed. The customer talked to me over the phone, and the paintings were delivered by their assistant. I spent almost a whole week working on them. Everything was going great, but when I was almost finished, something happened. That day, when I walked into the room, I saw that the paintings had been cut with a knife. I was completely stunned. They cost a fortune. I noticed that the window was open. Someone must have gone through it. But who would do it, and why? What was I supposed to do now? I was so anxious I couldn't sleep. The next morning, the customer called me. I had to admit that the paintings had been ruined. Of course, they got angry and demanded compensation. I took all my savings and sold everything I could. My headphones, Apple Watch, but it wasn't enough. Soon their assistant came to me and warned me that if I did not pay up soon, I would have big problems. I had no way of quickly earning so much money, so I decided to run away. I didn't have enough money to pay rent anyway, so I moved out. I had registered on a website using a pseudonym, so I hoped the customer wouldn't find me. Now, let's pause for a second. Remember how I said difficult times began for me? Forget it. That was the moment life got really hard. I had nowhere to go, and I was literally on the streets. I worked part-time as a loader at night, and went to school during the day and slept wherever I could. One day, they didn't pay me on time, and I didn't even have enough money for food. Staggering from fatigue, I wandered around the city and accidentally found myself in a weird area. I had no strength left, and I sat down right on the ground next to some abandoned building. Then I noticed some suspicious people heading toward me. It wasn't hard to guess what their intentions were. Most likely, they wanted to rob me. But since I had absolutely nothing they could take, they would probably just mock me. I was preparing for the worst when a bike suddenly drove into the alley at high speed. Those guys got scared and scattered. When the biker took off the helmet, I saw an angel. It was a girl in a white dress with wings on her back. Was I hallucinating? It was only when the girl leaned over that I recognized her as Lucia. She put her hands on her hips and glared at me, looking annoyed. Come with me. I was definitely hallucinating. I got on the bike behind her somehow. We arrived at a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. It was a complete mess. There were paintings and canvases with unfinished paintings lying around. Lucia turned on the microwave, cleared the table, and put a plate of hot food in front of me. I was so hungry that I immediately started chowing down. And then Lucia shocked me even more. If you have nowhere to go, you can stay here for now. I was so surprised I even choked. Why are you helping me all of a sudden? I'm kind by nature. Keep asking questions and you'll be back on the street. I didn't want that, so I kept all comebacks about her kindness to myself. From that day on, I started to live with her, but we hardly talked. Lucia didn't seem to notice that she had a roommate at all, so I was very surprised when one day she asked me for help. She was held up at school and asked me to get something for her. The place she sent me to turned out to be an advertising agency. There were different costumes in the box I was supposed to deliver. I realized that Lucia moonlighted as a commercial actress. That's why she had been wearing an angel costume the day she had saved me. I came back home and saw Lucia near the garbage cans. What was she doing there? As I got closer, I noticed stray dogs near her. Lucia was feeding them. She looked so cute that I felt lost. It wasn't like her at all. When Lucia noticed me, she immediately hid the dog food behind her back. There was an awkward pause. Coughing, I handed her the box. At home, we had dinner together for the first time. While Lucia was warming up the food, I realized that I had misunderstood what she was like. Her rudeness was just a defense mechanism, and she was actually kind. I wanted to get to know her better, but she kept shutting me out. One day, Lucia came home and told me that a graffiti contest was coming up. The winner would get a cash prize and a promising job. Lucia suggested we participate together. I loved the idea, and we started working on a sketch. Lucia had great ideas, and drawing with her turned out to be easy. When the sketch was completed, we found a building and started working. In a couple of weeks, the graffiti was ready. We stood in front of the painted wall, admiring our work. I hadn't expected it to look so cool. We got on the bike and were about to leave when I suddenly noticed some guys nearby. Among them was the assistant of the customer I had run away from. Damn it! They had found me after all. Looking right at us, the men came up to the graffiti, and that's when I noticed the buckets of paint in their hands. They were going to destroy our work. No, wait! Jumping off the bike, I ran up to them. They lowered the buckets to the ground. This is your last warning. If you don't repay the debt by the day after tomorrow, you'll go to jail. They left, and I grabbed my head. The day after tomorrow? Where was I supposed to get the money? Lucia suddenly put her hand on my shoulder. Don't worry, we'll figure something out. At that moment, something came over me. I don't even know where I found the courage for it, but I kissed her. At first, Lucia was confused, but then she suddenly kissed me back. Pulling away, I stroked her cheek. You are my angel. When we got home, my mom suddenly called me. Our family had been invited to an important event, and she asked me to go with them. At first, I wanted to refuse and almost hung up, but my mom was begging me so tearfully that I agreed in the end. Powerful businessmen and celebrities came to the event. I had already forgotten how to act at such parties and felt out of place. All sorts of people came up to us, but I didn't even try to remember their names. Then I saw a familiar face in the crowd. It was Mr. Allen. What was he doing there? Jasper, you've already met Mr. Allen, haven't you? He teaches you at school, but he's also a well-known collector. Mr. Allen, where is your daughter? A girl suddenly came up to my teacher. I gasped in surprise. It was Lucia. So she was Mr. Allen's daughter. I suddenly remembered where I had seen her before. One day, I had gone into the garden during a similar event and heard crying. A beautiful girl had been sitting at the side of the fountain. I had asked her why she was crying. She had said that her father constantly controlled her and forbade her from doing just about anything. I calmed her down and told her that she should make her own decisions. It was weird that it had taken me so long to remember that moment. Lucia wanted to say something, but Mr. Allen squeezed her hand and started to say goodbye to everyone. After they left, I decided to talk to Lucia at home. At the end of the evening, my father called me over to talk. I'm willing to forgive you and even pay off your debt if you drop out of school and come back. Hold on a sec. How did he even know about my debt? I had a terrible suspicion. Maybe the destroyed paintings had been his doing. When I asked him about it directly, he didn't even deny anything. Yes, your mom and I did everything, so you would have no other choice but to come home. But your customer is a real person, and you still owe them money. I was furious but got a grip on myself. Instead of fighting my dad, I asked for an extension. All I need is a little more time. I can win the contest. Give me a chance to prove myself and repay the debt without your help. It took some convincing, but eventually my dad agreed. When I got home, Lucia wasn't there. She didn't show up at school the next day, and I got worried. The contest was already the next day, and we were supposed to present the painting together. After a lecture, I came to Mr. Allen and asked him about Lucia. She often runs off somewhere, don't worry. It felt like Mr. Allen was hiding something. I was walking down the hallway, lost in thought, when Kit suddenly came up to me. Are you looking for Lucia? I live near the Allens and saw her last night. I saw Mr. Allen dragging her into the house by force. I immediately asked him for the address, and Kit suggested we go together. On the way, we talked about what had really happened with the fire. Kit remembered that the varnish he had given me had been provided by Mr. Allen himself. I was shocked. So it was the teacher who had set me up. When I got to the right house, I called Lucia loudly. She immediately appeared in the window of the second floor, and then I noticed something terrible. There were bars on the window. It turned out that Mr. Allen had locked her in her room. Kit and I walked around the house and noticed that the window on the first floor was ajar. We climbed into the house, went up to the second floor, and opened Lucia's room. Luckily, the key had been left in the keyhole. We quickly left the house, came back to the apartment we were renting, and she told us everything. My father wants me to be his successor. When I was a kid, he would lock me in my room, make me memorize art history and draw. I love to draw, but my father's tyranny put a damper on everything. One day, during an event, I was sitting in the garden and crying. That's when I met you, Jasper. Your words changed my life. I realized that something had to change and went against my father. I even acted in dumb commercials to earn money for rent. Lucia said that Mr. Allen had known my parents for a long time. Some time ago, they had come to him and asked him to make sure I would be expelled from school. But that hadn't worked out, and I had only been kicked out of the dorm. After that, Lucia started to watch over me and had come to the rescue when I was in a tight spot. You helped me, and I wanted to repay you in kind. I hugged her and promised her we would deal with everything together. And you know what? We did. The next day, we won the contest, and we were being awarded the prize. I saw my parents in the crowd. I was given the floor, and I made a speech looking right at them. We wanted our graffiti to show the freedom and uniqueness of each person. I hope that it will help other people accept me for who I am. To my surprise, my mom teared up, and Dad shook my hand after the award ceremony. You know, this contest opened my eyes. You will achieve everything in your own way. I believe in you, and I won't stand in your way anymore. Mr. Allen came up to us after my parents. It turned out that he had been my customer. I wasn't all that surprised and handed him an envelope with the money. But Lucia intervened. Actually, it was my father's assistant who broke into your room and ruined the paintings, so you don't owe him anything. Well, I think I agree with your parents, Jasper. Live as you see fit, and keep the money. Lucy and I didn't really believe him, but it didn't matter anymore. Thanks to our victory, we got cool jobs. We kept going to school and creating murals. Life got better, and I was happy. But one day, everything changed. That day, Lucia went to a meeting and didn't come home. She didn't show up at school either, and I had a horrible feeling of deja vu. My heart was pounding as I went to the dean and found out that Mr. Allen had quit. His house was empty. Lucia's phone was unavailable. I was sure that Mr. Allen had taken her somewhere again, so I asked my parents to use their connections to find her, but they didn't succeed. Or maybe they just lied to me because they didn't want to cross a powerful collector. But I won't give up. I can't live without Lucia, and I will definitely find my angel. Do you think I can do it? Write in the comments down below. I could use some kind words. Hi, I'm Jasper. Do you remember my story? If not, then be sure to watch part 1. A few months ago, my girlfriend Lucia disappeared. I was sure that her tyrant of a father had taken her away. I looked for her but found no leads. I kept going to my school of art and working. I even managed to open my own small graffiti agency. And guess what I called it? Angel, in Lucia's honor. And so, one day, I was sitting in the office and watching a sketch when I suddenly got a call from an unfamiliar number. When I answered, I heard some noise and muffled voices. And then, the line went dead. Soon, I got a message from the same number with just one word: Sedona. I was extremely confused and called the number back, but it was unavailable. I googled the word they sent me and found out that Sedona was a small town in Arizona. It was famous for its views and art galleries. Art galleries? My heart immediately started beating faster. It couldn't be a coincidence. The caller must have been Lucia. My best friend Kit worked for me. I knew his brother was a computer guru and turned to him for help. I asked him to find out whose number the call had been made from. It turned out that it belonged to Mrs. Page. I wrote down her address, left Kit in charge of the agency, and left for Sedona that evening. When I arrived, I immediately went to the address we'd found. A woman opened the door for me. At first, she was acting friendly, but as soon as I started talking about Lucia, she frowned. "Young man, stop bothering me with questions. I don't know anything." Miss Page looked scared and was obviously hiding something. She slammed the door in my face. I walked away from her house, sat down on a bench, and tried to think of what to do next. All of a sudden, a girl sat down next to me. "Hi, my name is Christy. I saw you talking to my mom. Did you want to ask her about Lucia?" I had hope again. "Do you know what happened to her? Where is she?" "Mr. Allen and his daughter moved a few months ago. My mom worked as a cook for them. Mr. Allen wasn't kind to Lucia. He would lock her up, forbid her from using her phone and internet. He constantly made her study or draw even though Lucia didn't want to. My mom became Lucia's friend and gave her her phone number. However, when she called you, Mr. Allen came back. He took away her phone, locked Lucia up again, and fired my mom." I clenched my hands into fists. Poor Lucia. She had gone through so much. Christy agreed to take me to their house. I was about to sneak inside when Mr. Allen himself came out on the porch. He was on the phone and looked very angry. Christy and I hid around the corner and eavesdropped. "Look, are you a detective or not? What am I paying you money for? My daughter ran away a day ago and you still haven't found her." "What? Lucia had escaped?" Staying there was useless, and so we left. We walked into a cafe and tried to figure out where to look for Lucia. I was sure she would contact me soon, but I just couldn't sit around and wait. I was sure she would go back to her hometown, so I had to hurry back as well. "It's getting late. How are you going to get back at night?" She convinced me to wait until the next morning, and I rented a hotel room. After checking in, I suddenly discovered that I had lost my phone. I rummaged through all my things, looked in my pockets, but it was nowhere to be found. Damn it! That was the worst possible moment to lose it. What if Lucia called me? I didn't remember any passwords and needed my phone to use social media. I felt really down and didn't sleep a wink. Early in the morning, Christy suddenly came to the hotel. When I saw the suitcase standing next to her, I was very surprised. "Can I come with you? My aunt lives in your city and she has been asking me to visit." So we went together. When she found out that I had lost my phone, Christy gave me her old phone. The first thing I did was check the place where I used to live with Lucia. Christy and I walked around the neighborhood and went to the apartment. But Lucia was nowhere to be found. I was looking around the street when I suddenly noticed something. There was a girl that looked a lot like Lucia standing at a bus stop. I wanted to come up to her, but Christy suddenly hugged me. "Don't worry, we will definitely find her." I thanked her for her support, but decided to talk to the girl at the bus stop anyway. But then, a bus pulled up. The girl got on it, and I didn't manage to get a look at her. After that, we went to the office. Kit looked like he hadn't slept in days. "We are too busy dealing with these damn documents to do anything else. Jasper, please hire someone good with numbers already." Christy suddenly spoke up. "I am actually studying to be an economist. I could help you out while I'm visiting my aunt." That was exactly what we needed, so I hired her on the spot. I finally got lucky. Over the next couple of days, I went to all the police stations and showed the cops pictures of Lucia. But that brought no results. She hadn't gone to the police. I despaired and began to suspect that she had stayed in Sedona, or maybe the detective had found her first. One day, I was sitting in the office when Christine came to me. She told me that we had got a cool offer. A fashion house planned to put on an unusual show right on the street. They wanted us to draw graffiti on the wall in the area where the show would take place. The offer was really cool. Collaborating with such a brand was a huge step forward for us. All I could think about was Lucia, but I knew that I had to keep working as well. The next day, we met with the chief fashion designer and discussed the details. "We have several conditions. First of all, we like your works, so you have to draw the graffiti yourself. Secondly, you will come to the catwalk in one of our costumes and make a speech. It will be the most important part of the whole show. That made me hesitate. I had been planning to go to Sedona, but how could I do that if I was too busy drawing? The fashion house refused to compromise, so I had to agree to their terms. When I told my agency about everything, Christy agreed to help me once again. She called her mom and convinced her to go to Mr. Allen's house and get to the bottom of everything. Soon, Mrs. Page called her back and said that there was no news about Lucia in Sedona. The next day, I started working on the graffiti. It reminded me of the time when Lucia and I had been preparing for the city competition. The fashion house liked my idea, and a graffiti of a girl with wings gradually appeared on the wall. One day, Christy and I stayed late in the office. I offered her a ride home, but for some reason she hesitated. Is something wrong? Christy smiled tightly and finally agreed. When we arrived, there was just a grocery store at the address she had given me. Christy laughed nervously. I'm still getting my aunt's address wrong sometimes. My house is over there. After saying goodbye, I pretended to leave, parked around the corner, and watched Christy. I knew the house she had pointed at. My friends lived there. Why hadn't Christy given me her real address? A couple of minutes later, she got into a taxi and I followed her. Christy arrived at a hotel, which surprised me even more. Why did she live there and not at her aunt's? Or was there no aunt to begin with? Her behavior seemed suspicious to me. I called Kit's brother again and asked him to find out the truth. He called me back a half an hour later and confirmed that Christy had no relatives in the city. But why had she been coming with me then? The show was scheduled for the next day, and I wanted to put the finishing touches to the graffiti. So I decided to deal with Christy later. I came to finish my graffiti and saw a guy standing next to it. He was studying it carefully. When I got closer, he gave me a friendly smile. You're Jasper, right? My name is Mark. I've been a big fan of your work for a long time. This one is absolutely amazing. His words flattered me, and we got to talking. Mark turned out to be a great conversationalist. I invited him to the show the next day, and he promised to come. In the morning, the fashion designer and other employees of the fashion house looked at my finished work. Everyone loved it. Before the show, I was given an outfit I was supposed to wear on the catwalk. It turned out to be an angel costume. When I saw it, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But a contract was a contract, and I had to put it on. Kit and Christy came to the show as well. At some point, security came up to us to check our passes. Christy rummaged through her things and couldn't find hers. Then, her phone suddenly fell out of her purse. Wait a minute, it was my phone, the one I had lost in Sedona. Christy tried to pick it up, but I beat her to it. I turned it on, looked through the call history, and couldn't believe my eyes. Lucia had called me more than once. Then I checked the messages and started shaking with rage. The last message sent to Lucia said, I'm tired of looking for you and I've found a new girlfriend. Deal with your problems yourself and don't call me anymore. It was clear that that message had been sent by Christy. But why? I lost my temper, pushed her against the wall, and demanded an explanation. But then I heard the host. It was my cue. I wanted to walk away from the stupid show, but the agency would have had to pay a big penalty, so I had to pull myself together. I got on the catwalk and was given a microphone. The host warned me that the show was being broadcast live throughout the city. I had prepared a speech in advance, but ended up saying something completely different. This is graffiti of my angel. Angel, if you can hear me, please let me know where you are. Trust me, I love you and I won't let you down again. I was hoping Lucia would hear me, and you know what? She did! When I was coming down from the catwalk, I got a message with an address. I asked Kit to watch Christy and rushed there. I came to a poor neighborhood, looked around but didn't see anyone. Then I suddenly heard someone sobbing behind the garbage cans. I came closer and saw Lucia. Tears were streaming down her face, and she looked terrible. But it didn't matter. I finally found her. Lucia must have gone without food for a while. She could barely stand. I picked her up and carried her to the car. I was afraid to go back to our apartment, so I decided to take Lucia to my parents' house in my hometown, especially since they weren't there at the moment. On the way there, I stopped by a supermarket and bought ready-made food. At home, Lucia ate, took a bath, and calmed down a little. However, as soon as she felt a bit better, she immediately pounced on me. You traitor! How could you do this to me? At that moment, she looked like her old self, the meanest girl in college who saved my life. It took some work, but I managed to calm her down again and convince her to tell me everything that had happened. My father took me away for a reason. Shortly before that, I had found out his dirty secret. Half of the paintings in his collection had been stolen. We had a fight, and I threatened to turn him into the police. Then, he took me to Sedona by force. I managed to escape and came back here with the last of my money. I went to our apartment and saw you hugging another girl there. I felt so hurt I left without talking to you. So it really had been her. That girl who had gotten the bus really had been Lucia. In the evening, I decided to call you after all, but you didn't answer, and then texted me to leave you alone. I told her I hadn't texted her that. It had all been Christy. She was probably helping Mr. Allen and hung out with me all the time on purpose. Lucia told me how hard life had been for her in the recent weeks. She starved and didn't have a place to sleep. She was afraid to go to the police in case her father found her. She didn't want to go back to him for anything. Her words made my heart sink. I scooped her up in my arms and hugged her tightly. There's no way I'm letting you go again. We sat there for a while longer, and then I suggested we go to the police together. Lucia agreed. We looked out the window, made sure that there was no one suspicious on the street, and left the house. Just as we got down from the porch, someone suddenly attacked us. We hadn't even had time to come to our senses when we were pushed into a car with tinted windows and taken somewhere. I tried to get free but had no success. Soon, we found ourselves in the house that Allens used to live in. They locked us in Lucia's room. There were bars on the windows. I didn't understand how they had found us. Christy had been with Kit and couldn't have followed us. The door suddenly opened and Mr. Allen walked into the room. And with him was... No, it was impossible. It was Mark, the guy who had claimed to be a fan of my work. It soon became clear that he was the detective Mr. Allen had hired. I couldn't believe I had invited him to the show myself. What am I supposed to do with you, Jasper? I don't need you, but my daughter must have told you about the paintings. I can't just let you go. You'll hand me over to the police right away. Let us go. I promise, we'll just live our lives and keep quiet about you. Mr. Allen chuckled. I don't trust promises. Besides, Lucia owes everything to me. I've invested too much into her. She will become my successor and do everything I say. As for you, you stay here for now. I'll decide what to do with you tomorrow. After he and Mark left, I hugged Lucia tightly again. Don't listen to him. You don't owe him anything. Lucia pulled away. She looked at me with tear-filled eyes and uttered words that made me fall even deeper in love with her. You are my angel. We tried to figure out how to escape, but nothing came to mind. The situation seemed hopeless, but I wasn't about to give up. Then we heard a noise downstairs, and then footsteps and voices. The door to our room opened again, and I was stunned. Those were my parents. The last time my dad had been so angry was when I had run away from home. Although, come to think of it, now he wasn't just angry. He was furious. The cops were hovering behind my parents. How did you get here? There was a video surveillance in the house you brought Lucia to. That's how I found out you were kidnapped. I stayed out of Alan's business, but he crossed a line when he took you. I used my connections, and here we are. Lucia told the police about the stolen paintings. It turned out they had been in the house the whole time. Mr. Allen had been afraid to take them with him to Sedona. He had a full vault in the basement of his house. Lucia entered the code on the door and let the cops in. Mr. Allen was arrested, and we finally breathed a sigh of relief. Soon, we found out that Kit was dating Christy. To be honest, I was shocked by the news. One day, they asked us over, and Christy told us her story. She loved dancing, but her mother made her study economics. Mr. Allen promised to get Christy into the School of Art if she helped him. I'm so sorry. I'm so ashamed of what I did. Lucy and I were so happy that we couldn't bear a grudge. After a while, Christy plucked up the courage and transferred to the School of Art on her own. We often hang out with her and Kit. After the fashion show, our agency became very popular. People stand in lines to take pictures with my graffiti. The Flying Girl has become a city landmark. Lucia and I are improving and developing our brand. We get a ton of commissions, and my parents are very proud of me. That's my story. You know, after going through all this, I can say with confidence, true love exists. Do you believe in it?